Alright guys, welcome to the first episode or video of Quarantine Cooking Class. We'll work on that name, or we'll keep it. We'll find out and see what the response is. So yesterday I asked people to send me messages, ask questions about some cooking while we're all stuck in our houses. And not many responses. We'll get more in the future. So a friend of mine, Michelle Laney, thank you for your input. She wanted to know the secret to always having crispy home fries or breakfast potatoes. So a couple of tricks and things like that we're going to show you. Pretty basic, pretty simple. First thing you're going to need is a knife and a cutting board. The second thing you're going to need are potatoes. These lovely green giant fresh potatoes from the local grocery down here. If you can, try and find something a little more local, organic and all that. This is what we got right now. The kind of potato is pretty important in this situation. You could use a waxy potato like this here. The gold potatoes are waxy potatoes. And then there's starchy potatoes. The difference between the two of those is obviously one has more starch content, which is your russet potato. It's the starchiest. And then chef's potatoes or golds or reds, red bliss are all non-starchy but waxy potatoes. The difference is that a waxy potato, when you cook it, will hold its shape better, where a starchy potato will get a little bit more mushy. For what we're trying to do, this will work. I would personally normally use a russet potato or like an Adirondack blue, something like that, but we got these. So carefully open your container. Here we are. So we're going to do a couple of these guys, about 4. Not needing to cook for a lot of people right now, just myself. First thing is proper cutting technique. For those of you who wield a knife from time to time or don't very often, just the basics on how to cut some stuff. So we'll move these 3 over here. What you want to do is take your knife, stand at your cutting board, and just kind of drop it. So you see the angle that the knife sits at, that's the angle at which you cut. So I always hold my knife 2 fingers here, and these guys are just kind of the guide on the bottom side for the handle. Anytime that you're cutting a vegetable that has a round edge or a tendency to roll like this one, you want to start by giving yourself a flat edge. So this flat edge here is going to sit right on your cutting board. And that way when you're working with it, it's not going to roll around and bite and things like that, and you won't cut your fingers. You might, but it's a lot less likely. So the idea here is we're going to make mid-size, medium diced home fries. So a medium dice is right around a ½ inch squared. So first cut, we're just going to kind of cut in again. Then we take this guy, and drop it, again keeping that flat edge. Cut again, and cut one more time. So now what we have, as you can see here, is just slivers of potato. So we're going to take these slivers, turn them again, and just cut down the line. You guys will notice when I'm cutting, the knife blade never actually leaves contact with my fingers. It's always making contact with the fingers. That way, you always know where your knife is. You don't actually have to look at it over time. Once you get practiced at that, I wouldn't suggest trying it right off the bat. So we'll get the rest of these all blocked out, and we will get back to you once that part is done. Cue the time lapse and cheesy music. Another thing about cutting and prepping your vegetables is you always want to do the same motion as many times until you complete that, and then switch to the next motion. The idea is that muscle memory is a thing, and that way you'll be more comfortable when you're doing these cuts because you'll be doing the same cut over and over as opposed to switching. So now that we've got all of our potatoes here cut like that, just dice them out. Again, see how I'm always keeping contact with my blade? You got your end pieces here, kind of just line them up. Go cut, spin it. The other part of this is always keep this little guy behind these guys. So this idea, if you can see it, my thumb is always going to be behind my finger when I'm cutting. That way, you don't sneak it out. A lot of people will sneak that thumb tip out, and you end up doing what my buddy Timmy did, and you cut off a 1/4 inch of your thumb. And then you throw it in the trash can like an idiot. Good job, Tim. All right, so now we've got our potatoes cut here. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some water boiling. Once that water boils, you're going to take this lovely stuff here, Arm & Hammer baking soda. You're going to add about a tablespoon, half tablespoon to your water that you're boiling. So salt, baking soda, potatoes. Put the potatoes in when it's boiling. It'll stop boiling. Then you bring it back to a boil. Wait for 5 minutes until they're fork tender. So that means you can take a fork, stab a potato, and it'll kind of just slide back off. There's not a lot of texture left to it. So we'll get that going and we'll get back to you. All right, so now that we have our potatoes here cut and our water is boiling, we're gonna add a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda per quart of water. So if you're doing 2 quarts of water, you're gonna use a half teaspoon. So I got my half teaspoon here. I'm going to dump this in my water with a whole teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to throw our potatoes in. I personally, in this situation, I like to pick up my cutting board, carry it over, and just kind of sweep everything in. That way you're not really worrying about stuff like dropping potatoes on the floor, basically just dropping potatoes on the floor. Also, I would typically be cutting and prepping next to my stovetop. It's just in order to do this in my single-man filming station, we're going to work on this countertop and walk over here. Alright, so here we are at the boiling water. Steam, you like my lighting? I know, it's great. Alright, so here we go. We're just going to sweep them on in. Very important to use an appropriately sized pan. I'll say right now I'm pushing the limit with with what I chose to do here, but this one will work. Alright, so we got the potatoes in there. We're going to let this water come back to a boil. Let it boil for about 5 minutes. We'll give it the fork test, and then we'll get to the next step. Make a classic home fried potato. I like to use garlic powder or granulated garlic, onion powder, cumin, however you want to pronounce it, chili powder, and paprika. I like to use smoked paprika more than anything. It's got a great flavor. So we're going to take all those ingredients, and we're just going to put them into a little bowl here. We're going to get it all mixed up. And then when the potatoes are ready, which shouldn't be that long, we're going to pull them out, throw them in a bowl, toss a little oil in there, toss a seasoning blend on, and then we'll follow the next steps. Ooh, bubbles. Anyway, so now that we've got our potatoes here boiling, they've been going for about 5 minutes, we're going to just kind of stab in here, see if we can't get one. Oh, we got a potato. Alright, and bring it over to our cutting board here, and give it a proper poke. See how soft that is, how easy it went in? You can even kind of mash it a little bit. See how that just broke up? That means your potatoes are done. So we're not going to use that one because we mashed it. But the rest of them here we're going to strain out, and then I'll show you what's next. Alright, so here's our potatoes, and just to show you what the baking soda does, if it'll focus, see the texture on here? See how it's kind of got this little extra layer of kind of just mealy potato that kind of comes off? So that outer layer there, what's going to happen is that's going to be what crisps. So it's pulled a little bit of extra moisture out and created this extra external layer of tackiness. And I'm going to take this seasoning blend and just sprinkle a little on. Mix this stuff together. And you'll see, you kind of see the starches. That's the word I was looking for earlier. You can see the starches kind of pulling off. And as you mix them together a little bit, they become a little bit more starchy. You can see the starch on the spoon there. And a little bit more textured. So that, again, creates this little bit of starch barrier on the outside. That's already good. All right, so from here you have two options on how you want to cook these.
One, cast iron. Get this bad boy going on the top of your stove. You're gonna add a little more oil in there, and when it gets hot enough, you're gonna toss them in. I'll show you that. The other option is get your oven going. 375, 350, depending on your depending on how good your oven is, and then throw them right in on a baking sheet. The starch that's been pulled out because of the baking soda will crisp up really well, and I'll show you what both methods look like. Ooh. All right, guys, so we got our pan nice and hot. You can see from a little bit of the smoke coming off. By the way that I cook and the way that most chefs will cook, you're gonna need to disconnect your smoke detectors or have a good hood vent. We're used to cooking in places where air filtration and airflow is a given. So yeah. So if you're gonna do the stovetop method, again, use a cast iron, get your pan up to like a medium-high heat, and then throw them in there, kind of one layer, and just put them in there and let them sit. Give them about a minute and a half on one side. Use a spatula. What you want to do is make sure that when you can use a spatula or a wooden spoon. I like to use wooden spatula, which is a combination. You kind of scrape them up. So you see what's happening here? A little brown. So we're going to scrape all this up, kind of toss it around a little bit. And once they've been kind of moved around, we're going to just let them sit again. The other option is for the oven. If you're going to go in the oven, and I said I was going to use a baking sheet, but I don't have one I trust. So I'm going to use this frying pan. You want to throw them in, a little oil in the bottom. I would prefer to use clarified butter, but I don't have any, so we're going to use coconut oil. We're going to take this pan. You want to do a single layer. You want to try and keep them from being clumped up and together, because the more air and heat that can circulate around all sides of the potato, the more crisp the potato will be on all sides. So we're going to take these guys, we're going to fire them in the oven here. Also, if you have a convection oven in which the air is going to be constantly circulating during the cooking process, that is a lot better. Again, the more heat and air that hits all sides of the potato, the crisper it will be. Bad boys are looking nice, getting that good brown sizzle on there. You can see that nice brown texture. When I do stovetop, the thing I like to do here, once we get about to this point where we got a nice brown potato, nice and smoky, I like to throw a little onion in there. The onion does a couple of things. One, adds a little astringency, a little more flavor. And two, it helps pull up that flavor that gets stuck to the pan. So we'll toss those in there, switch them around a little bit. Again, try not to clump everything together, just kind of move it around. We are definitely going to have to get better lighting. And by we, I mean me. Oh, and my dog. He'll come out. All right, so the stovetop potatoes are pretty much ready. At this point, if you wanted to, you could throw cooked sausage in there. You could throw some bacon in there. If you're feeling it, you can make a hollandaise sauce and throw that on top when it's done. Fresh herbs go on after the cooking process, so parsley and things like that, oregano if you want, cilantro depending on your spice blend. All those things get added at the end. Toss them one more time, throw it on a plate, and eat it. All right, so that is stovetop home fries in a cast iron pan. We used the baking soda method and the boiling of the potatoes, and we just took these guys, cooked them off in the pan. You can see the little crusties on there. If you want to have more brown all the way around on these, add more oil. Essentially, you'd be kind of shallow frying them in your pan. I didn't go that route. I kind of like to have this texture mixed with the crispiness on the other side. Even though it's 9:30 p.m., I'm gonna eat that. So there they are, home fries, fresh out the oven. You can even hear the crunch, see the softness in the middle, and there you go. All right, that's that. I'm gonna eat this now. Just me and my homies. Oh, dad joke.